Yes, it is Zoom. Welcome everyone to our Lunch and Learn format of webinars. I'll be doing this series over 4 weeks where the topic is going to be transformational feedback. I used to think a 1-hour webinar was quick. Well, I reckon 30 minutes is going to be super quick. So as always, if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. We'll try to be as engaged as possible. Have your chat box ready. I'm going to ask you some questions. I would love to hear your questions as well and your answers, of course. And for those who are coming back again, welcome back. I'm seeing some familiar faces here. Thank you so much for your support. I'm sure we'll have a few other people log in as we go along. So without further ado, let me share my screen, guys, and we're going to jump straight in. Okay, transformational feedback. We're doing 4 modules. 1 module. Oh, that was pretty special. And this is module number 1, which is how to effectively receive feedback. Now, these organizations here, these are just some of the organizations throughout Asia and around the world that we're delivering this type of training, leadership training, coaching training. Most of the sessions for the last 2 years have been virtual online workshops and webinars for organizations. And I'm pleased to say we're starting to get back into face-to-face training here in Thailand and around the region. In fact, tomorrow I'm heading 2 hours north up to Khao Yai to facilitate a strategic alignment session for a large multinational company. Can't wait for the face-to-face action. So rest assured, we're learning some really top-notch material here together today. So it's a 4-week journey, as I mentioned. This is where we're going to start today, which is all about being open to receive feedback. And we're going to learn the 4D framework on how to do that. Next week, we'll be preparing for your feedback. Basically, before you deliver the feedback, you need to prepare. You need to get ready, and we're going to follow the INSPIRE principles. That's next week, same time, okay, same day of the week. Then it's time, once you're open to receive it, once you have prepared to deliver the feedback, now you're actually ready to deliver that transformational feedback. And we're going to discover the BIF model. And then very importantly, what do you do after the feedback? How do you follow up? How do you support? How do you ensure that behavioral or that performance change that you're looking for? And we need to walk before we run. So this is where we're going to start on module number 1, being open to effectively receive feedback. Let's take a look. Now, one of the first things that I want to highlight, this concept, this transformational feedback that I'm going to share with you over these 4 weeks, it transcends culture. It goes beyond whatever culture and whatever country that you're in. You know, I've been living here in Thailand 20 years. I've been delivering workshops all around the region. And one thing is for sure, and that's this statement here, in the context of business, right? Straight talk and clear communication can prevent and resolve 98% of all problems, right? So there's this kind of concern or almost a fear that certain cultures behave a certain way. In Thailand here, we call it Brang Jai, which means someone who is lesser experienced or younger cannot, speak openly to someone who is more senior or who is more older than them. It's very similar in Japan, which is very hierarchical, that everyone just listens to what the boss says and says like, yes, boss. Now, that may have been true 20 or 30 years ago. And in the modern business landscape in which we're all living at the moment, that is a surefire way to, drive your business into the ground, is like that lack of open communication. So straight talk and clear communication, up, down, sideways, left and right, and all around, it can prevent and resolve 98% of all of your problems. Even big problems like, this pandemic that's just happened, or the lockdown, challenges with supply chain and all the things that are still happening in the world. Guess what? You might not be able to control those outer forces, yet with your team, through that direct communication, you find solutions. And that's what feedback is all about. So let's take a look at the definition here. Let's be really, really clear. It's information about a person's performance or behavior, which is used for basis for improvement. Right? Now think about this fundamental concept here. When we give feedback to someone, I would say 100% of the time, it's because we want the other person to improve. We're not giving them feedback to make them feel bad. We're not giving them feedback to make ourselves feel bad. We're not giving them feedback because we want to be difficult or we want the business to move slower. None of that is true. The truth is, we give feedback because we want the other person to improve. That's it. So, feedback is almost a dirty word. There's so much emotion caught up in this process of feedback. And that's what this series of webinars is about. I want to demystify that process, that feedback is a dirty word or a negative word. So first and foremost, it's to help people improve, right? Why is it important? It creates alignment between the employee's performance and or their behavior with the company's expectations, or you as the leader, your expectations. So in other words, if the performance or the behavior is a challenge, right, it's not meeting your expectations, guess what? If nothing changes, nothing changes. So if you really want people to fully transform, you have to be willing to have that straight talk and that clear communication to share with them what are your expectations. Because if you don't communicate anything, they will continue with that unwanted behavior or performance. Yeah. It shows your commitment to changing the culture through a committed conversation. In other words, you're willing to do whatever it takes. You're willing to get out of your own comfort zone to give that feedback as necessary to help for improvement. And very importantly, it brings those background conversations into the foreground. The kind of the gossip and the or the things that you know that you should say, but you don't. And then things that you should say and then you don't. And so giving constructive transformational feedback takes that stuff from the background and brings it into the foreground because you really want people to improve. Now, I want you to be honest right now, please, ladies and gents. There's only a handful of us on the call right now, so it's a safe space. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at receiving feedback? On a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at receiving feedback? 1 means you're like this guy, la, 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 la. And just go ahead and pop it into the chat box for me. 10 means you gobble up feedback for breakfast. Yum, 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 yum. So tell me, guys, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at receiving feedback? Just pop it into the chat box there. And guys, this is only for your self-evaluation. This is not a judgment or a competition or anything like that. So awesome. Thanks for sharing. We've got a 4, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 7, a 7, an 8, a 7 out of 10, 5, and it's depending who is delivering it and how it's delivered. And that's a very good point, Adrian. So this is interesting right now, and this is the main point, what I'm about to share with you now. If you're in a leadership role, and I expect that most of you on the call today are in a leadership role, or you hope to be one day, whether you're a senior leader, middle management, you have your own business, whatever it is, follow me here. If for example, I'm only a 2 out of 10 at receiving a feedback, me personally, right? I'm good 2 out of 10, which means I'm like this guy, la, 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 don't talk to me, la, 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 right? So I'm a 2 out of 10. And then, in the afternoon, I need to give feedback to my subordinate, to my peer, to someone I'm working with on a project or whatever. How on earth can I possibly deliver effective, transformational feedback if I myself am not willing to hear it, right? It's simply not congruent, right? If I'm a 2 out of 10 to receive, I can really not deliver any better than a 2, maybe a 3 out of 10. It's not authentic. It's not congruent. And it's simply the other person, they know that you hate receiving feedback. So they're there listening to you going, yeah, right. Yeah. And they're looking at you thinking, you're trying to give me feedback and I know that you're a 2 out of 10. Are you kidding me? Why should I listen to you? So guys, wherever you are on your scale and your spectrum, I would invite you to keep working on your ability to receive feedback and get it up to an 8 or a 9 or a 10, right? But let's explore a little bit deeper here and answers into the chat box, please. Why is it so difficult to receive feedback? Right? Who can tell me in the chat box, please, or unmute yourself? Why is it so difficult to receive feedback? Who would like to share, please? Answers in the chat box. What do you think? Oh, nice one, Irene. The truth hurts, right? So this is true. Oftentimes that feedback, especially guys, remember, people are giving us feedback because they want us to improve. It's not to make us feel bad. They're not doing that on purpose, right? So sometimes that feedback is something that's kind of out of our blind spot. It's something that we did not know that we did not know. And so sometimes that truth can be a little bit shocking. It can be a little bit painful and we can be a little bit reactive. So that's spot on, Irene. Thank you for sharing. It's criticism. It can be taken as criticism sometimes. And like you said, Adrian, depends who delivers it and how it's delivered. But we need to get beyond that, right? If we truly want to deliver effective feedback at an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10, we've got to be good at receiving it, regardless of who is telling us and regardless of how they are telling us. Negativity, the way feedback is presented. Yeah, so often, guys, people, leaders, they haven't had some kind of official training in how to effectively deliver feedback. And so as a result, it's highly emotionally charged. So yeah, it's often delivered in a very clunky, very awkward way. Stereotype. Yeah, so everyone has this stereotype that feedback is difficult. So we automatically assume it's going to be difficult because of being self-confident. Yeah, we might lack self-confidence. And so when we receive that feedback, it shakes us and it actually feels like it's reducing our level of confidence, which again, in today's session, guys, I want us to get beyond that. Company, cultural, and discrimination. Yeah, it can be. It can sometimes be discriminatory based on your age or your gender or your experience or your culture and so on. Receiving feedback is a skill one needs to sharpen regularly. Exactly, Saniva. That's why you're all here with me today. So let's jump into it, guys. Ego dented, exactly. So this is why we're starting with the beginning first. I want to share with you the 4D framework to be able to elegantly and effortlessly receive feedback from anyone. So let's take a look. Receiving feedback with the 4D framework, right? We call it the 4D. I try to make a little acronym to help us remember it. The first one, okay, so this is when you're receiving feedback. Guys, remember, today we're not talking about delivering feedback. That's going to come in the next couple of weeks. Today, you've got 1 week to practice this. So the first D, in able to be effortlessly being able to receive feedback, is data. What do I mean by that? The feedback that you are receiving isn't necessarily the truth. It is simply data and information. So, and I want you to imagine for a moment, if you will, imagine that when you are receiving feedback, it's not really you, right? Imagine that you are observing someone giving someone else feedback. Well, that feedback that's being delivered, it's simply data and information. At this point, it may or may not be true. So what I want you to do is just recognize that it is just data and information, and I want you to be a little bit detached from it, right? I just want you to see those words that are coming out of that person's mouth. It is simply data and it's simply information. It is simply their point of view, which may not be the truth at this moment. It may not be accurate. So that helps us kind of detach a little bit to just know that it's just data, right? It's just data and information. So that's the first D. The second D, and these kind of move hand in hand here. The second D is don't take it personally, which I know that might sound a little bit, contradictory, like, well, they're giving me the feedback, surely it must be personal. No, it is simply that person's point of view, which at the moment is still only data and information. It may or may not be true for you, so you don't need to take it personally. So again, I want you to imagine detaching yourself from that data and information. Now, especially here, guys, if the other person who's delivering you the feedback, if they are getting angry, if they are getting frustrated, if they are being discriminatory, if they're finger pointing and blaming and blah, 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 it says a lot more about their lack of emotional intelligence, and that is not yours to own. So in other words, they have never been to how to deliver transformational feedback workshop, have they? So when they are getting angry at you, they might be projecting their own fear. They might be projecting their own insecurities, their own lack of skill or capability, their own fear about getting found out or whatever it is. So trust me, guys, when that other person is getting all emotional and up in your face, don't take it personally. It's not yours. Right now, I know this is easier said than done, and I know some people can push your buttons a lot easier than other people can push your buttons. Isn't it fascinating? One person who perhaps you care deeply about can say one thing, and then you'll get really, really plugged in and triggered. Whereas if someone else says it, you're like, idiot, who are you? Who are you to talk to me like that? Same information coming from two different people. So I just want you to realize that do not take it personally. It's not yours to own. Because here's the thing, guys, when you can detach from the emotion, then you have a chance to find the gift. Remember, if you can receive feedback, and if it is true for you, it is a gift to help you improve. It might be showing you part of your blind spot or your shadow or the things that you don't know that you don't know. Next D. Now, this is the tough one. The first two are easy, believe it or not. Dare to seek the truth. Dare to seek the truth. What do I mean by that, guys? Is you've got to ask yourself at this point, right? Because it's just data and information. You don't take it personally. There it is. The information is sitting. And then you ask yourself, is this true for me? Is this feedback that this person wonderfully, courageously shared with me just now, good, bad, or ugly, however they did it, remember, that's not yours to own. I wonder, is it true for me? And this is what I mean. You've got to dare to think a little bit differently. You've got to dare to think outside your own kind of world view. You've got to look beyond the things that you know, the things that you know that you don't know. And you need to ask yourself, is this feedback something that I don't know that I don't know? Now, here's the thing. It might take a minute or two. It might take an hour or two or three. It might even take a couple of days, guys. It might take you a couple of days if you honestly and courageously ask yourself, is this true for me? I'm going to tell you that 95% of the time, there is an element of truth in that feedback. Yes, the person may have exaggerated. Yes, they may have got emotionally, attached to the delivery of the feedback. And if you dare to seek the truth, especially in the areas that you don't know, and you ask yourself, is this true for me? 95% of the time, the answer will be yes. Not always. Sometimes someone will say something to you, and you know what? If you're certain that it's not the truth, then why react to it? Why get plugged in by it? Why get triggered by it if you know that it's not true? You can just simply have empathy for that person, that maybe they are projecting on you. Maybe they are trying to protect themselves. Maybe they are living in fear. Okay? So data and information, don't take it personally. Dare to seek the truth by asking yourself, is this true for me? And this is the tough love sometimes. This is the truth can hurt, right? And either way, now you're ready to move on to the final D, which is you need to decide. You need to decide, what are you going to do with this gift? What are you going to do with this valuable information that has just been given to you as a gift from the universe? So you can now decide what actions you will take to transform yourself, whether it's personally or professionally, guys, and then you take those actions, right? So you decide, what am I going to do to improve myself? And of course, a decision isn't enough. You need to follow through with some kind of action afterwards, right? So let's wrap it up here. You're receiving feedback. It's just data and information. You're slightly detached. You don't take it personally because it's simply data and information, which may or may not be true. And no matter who it is or how they're delivering it, it's still just data and information that may or may not be true. Now, check this, guys. By following these first two Ds, that helps maintain your emotional intelligence. That helps you to be non-reactive, right? So you can now dare to seek the truth by asking yourself, is this true for me? Right? And by the way, a nice way, guys, here's a bonus tip. A nice way to give yourself a little bit of extra space, right, before you react, because remember, you want to respond, not react, is when someone gives you feedback, you know what you can say? Thank you. And I just want you to smile. And you might be a volcano inside. You might want to punch them in the face, which I don't recommend. You might want to throw something across the room, which I don't recommend. Take a breath, look them in the eye, and say thank you. And then you say to yourself, now let me consider if that is true for me or not. I wonder. And you can say to the other person, let me get back to you. Let me process that. Thank you for sharing that. I had no idea. Can I reflect on that a little while and get back to you, boss or dear, depending on who gave you the feedback, right? So then you want to decide. Cool? Excellent. So that's it, guys. This is the simple, powerful, effective step that must happen first before you can deliver transformational feedback. So now is a great time for any questions. If you have any questions on how to help receive the feedback more effortlessly, please pop them into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself. And just while we're waiting on any questions, guys, please, if you enjoyed today's topic, 30 minutes, I told you it was going to be super, super quick. This is session 1 of 4, remember. So today's how to receive feedback. Next week is preparing to deliver the feedback, because you want to prepare in advance. Week 3 is actually delivering it. And then week 4 is after the feedback. And if you've enjoyed this little bite-sized nugget of wisdom, then I'm sure you will absolutely love our more intense trainings. We have our NLP 4-in-1 leadership certification coming up in a bit over a month, I guess, on 7 to 11 of July. So NLP is all about communication strategies, internal communication, the way we think, the way we make decisions, our strategic thinking, and of course, the way that we communicate with the world around us. Perfect for leaders, perfect for coaches, perfect for business owners. The dates for that are 7 to 11 of July. You can join us in Bangkok. Face-to-face training is on for business here in Thailand. Borders are open. You can fly in and you can join us. Only 50,000 baht for payment in full, or we have a 5-month payment plan. Too easy. And the next program is the ICF Leadership Coaching Certification. So for those of you who want to be professional leadership coaches inside of your organization or leadership executive coaches, this is the course for you. You can join us virtually. You can join us here in Bangkok, happening in mid-July. Early bird investment 55, and there's a payment plan as well. Now let's see, do we have any questions there in the chat box? Sometimes feedback can be very general and not specific. How do we then clarify with the feedbacker? What a great question, Irene. So again, first of all, you're going to practice your 4D framework, and then you can simply ask them, do you have some specific examples for me, is one way. Or you could say something like, what do you mean by that, right? Or do you have some suggestions on how I might be to improve? Or said another way, would you mind to share what are your expectations of me, right? So they're all, and I think starting with a specific example first is going to be the best. And the best thing you can do is remain calm, right? Remember, most people delivering feedback, they've not had the appropriate training. Most of the time, they build it up, they build it up, they don't do it, they build it up, they build it up, they don't do it, and then blah, and then they give the feedback. So they're already in an emotional state, which automatically makes us defensive. But again, their emotional outburst, that is not yours to own. You do not take it personally. So I would start, Irene, by asking them about some specifics. Yeah. Relationship with feedback giver and level of trust is also very important. Exactly, Nils. Especially in an organization, guys, trust and what we call rapport is an ongoing process. And what I would invite you to do as leaders, in addition to joining these 4 sessions, is build a culture of open communication, right? Which is a culture that is open to share and receive feedback. So, you know, walk before you run. Ask for feedback. If you want to create a culture inside of your organization where feedback is the norm, then ask for feedback. Right at the end of a monthly meeting. Before we wrap up the meeting, ladies and gents, does anyone have any feedback for me on how I can improve? Right? Or you might want to save it during your one-on-one sessions with either your peers or your subordinates. It's okay to ask your subordinates for feedback, because guess what? If you lead by example and you start to do it, well, then that's going to open the channels of trusting communication. Another good approach is praise, criticize, then feedback. Yeah, they call that the feedback sandwich. So you start with something positive, you give the feedback, and then you close with something positive. Remember though, what we're looking at doing here is we need to realize that the truth is that feedback is positive. We're giving feedback to help the other person improve. We're receiving feedback because the other person wants to support us to improve. So we kind of need to remove this negative connotation as much as possible. And certainly starting with something bright and shiny and very, very positive will help ease the process. How do I encourage subordinates to give me the feedback? Suneva, ask them. Start one-on-one, okay? It's probably a little bit easier to do it one-on-one. At the end of a meeting or whatever, if you're having one-on-ones with your team once a month or whatever, at the end of it, just say to them, do you have any suggestions on how I can be a better leader? Now, of course, when you ask that the first time, they're going to look at you and go, no, boss, you're perfect. So this is, as Nils said, you need to build the trust. And then you can be a little bit playful, right? I would say something like, look, I know I'm perfect, but what if there was one thing that you need from me or that you can recommend to me that I can improve? What would that be? Right? And so you really kind of need, and you can be a little bit playful around it. We don't have to be so serious all the time, and you gently encourage them. And once they do it the first time, it will get so much easier in the future. Gosh, my subordinate here at Coachology, she lines up to tell me. She doesn't even wait for me to ask now. She comes up, Mr. Luke, can I share an observation? And I'm like, oh, here it comes. And then, of course, I'm ready to follow it because I follow the 4D. And I know that if she's courageous enough to come up and tell me that she has something to share, it must be really, really important, right? That's for sure. Yeah. Create the space, apply the safety catch, count to 10 and say thank you. Awesome. Great, guys. I think that's my 30 minutes. Awesome. A pleasure as always. Please join me next week. Tell your colleagues, tell your co-workers, tell your friends. I'm going to upload this session to YouTube, so if they weren't here today, they can watch the recording. Until next week, guys, stay safe, stay awesome, stay amazing. And if you haven't joined me already, see you at the NLP or the ICF. Until next week, ciao, ciao.